Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we're calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. The reason that we call it the deathbed edition is because there were a number of editions of Leaves of Grass. We're looking here now at the section that is referred to as Children of Adam and the poem that is called I Sing the Body Electric. And now we look at section number 8, which is of course in many ways a continuing text from passage number 7. This is the second part of what is sometimes referred to as the auction scene. We are dealing, of course, with slave auctions. Consider the fact that we're talking 1855. In 1851, you'll recall, at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio, it was, of course, the great hero Sojourner Truth who asked, "Ain't I a woman?" And of course, she was so influential in the abolitionist movement, as we've referred to her in room 303 many times, as one of the great American heroes. Consider as well the fact that the 1st of January, 1861, think about it, these lines we're going to study were first written and published in 55. 1861, January 1, was the last recorded slave auction. Now, with that in mind, the assumptions here that you've been with us at LearnStrong.net, down the left-hand side that Talks with Walt, from the very beginning in our inscription study, through starting from Paumanok, through the 52 sections of Song of Myself, and of course the other poems of Children of Adam, including obviously sections 1 through 7, especially our discussion of passage 7 of I Sing the Body Electric. Now, we're going to point out that in 1855, these lines were the last lines of this poem. We will, of course, meet a section 9, very controversial section as well, for some different reasons than the controversies that we're resurrecting here regarding Whitman and his racist views or racism in general of the time. But controversial nonetheless, passage 9. But this was the end of I Sing the Body Electric. We'll pay attention as well to some of the lines that were a part of the 1855 edition of this poem that never made it to print. Passage 8. A woman's body at auction. She's too is not only herself, she is the teeming mother of mothers. She is the bearer of them that shall grow and be mates to the mothers. Have you ever loved the body of a woman? Have you ever loved the body of a man? Do you not see that these are exactly the same to all in all nations and times all over the earth? If anything is sacred, the human body is sacred, and the glory and sweet of a man is the token of manhood, untainted, and in man or woman, a clean, strong, firm-fibered body is more beautiful than the most beautiful face. Have you seen the fool that corrupted his own live body, or the fool that corrupted her own live body? For they do not conceal themselves and cannot conceal themselves. Now, we'll pay attention to some of the missing lines, and at the end of this brief lecture, we'll ask you to comment in your own annotations as to why you think so much of those lines were annotated or edited out by Whitman. We'll come back now to a woman's body. By the way, in 55, it was just simply a woman at auction. A woman's body at auction. So we're coming right back to I Sing the Body Electric. She too, so in other words, we're coming back to this lines from above. This is not only one man, this the father of those who shall be fathers in their turns. In him the start of populous states and rich republics, from passage 6. She too, now, I'm sorry, from passage 7, now passage 8. She too is not only herself. She is the teeming mother of mothers. She is the bearer of them that shall grow and be mates to the mothers. Now, it's interesting that this idea of legacy is continued. The use of the word mates is as well a fascinating word. And then there are some other lines that are a part of the 55 edition that were edited out. Why? I'll leave to you. But they run like this. Her daughters and their daughters' daughters. Who knows who shall mate with them? Who knows through the centuries what heroes may come from them, sounding very much like passage 7. In them and of them natal love. In them the divine mystery, the same old beautiful mystery. Again, edited out. I'll leave to you as to why. And then he asks, again, a question that's rhetorical, but to who? have you ever loved the body of a woman? And then he follows it up with a line that was not in the 55 edition. Have you ever loved the body of a man? Now again, I told you guys that when Whitman uses the word love in Leaves of Grass, we want to sit up and pay attention because he doesn't do it very often. And when he does do it, what exactly is the reason for him using it? It's kind of like Dante in the Inferno, our comments about his use of fire. It doesn't happen very often. When it happens, we want to sit up and take note. The same is true here. Notice the question, have you ever loved the body of a woman? Have you ever loved the body of a man? Now, of course, we can talk about love as being some kind of sexual union or congress here. We can be talking about simply admiration or respect, however you wish to do it. And then, of course, another rhetorical question. Do you not see, everything comes back to perspicacity or insight or wisdom for Whitman. Do you not see that these are exactly the same? Notice his repetition of the word all. These are the same to all in all nations and all times all over the earth. The missing lines run like this. Have you ever loved a woman? Your mother. Is she living? Have you been much with her? And has she been much with you? Some pretty radical lines, obviously for a male reader especially, edited out. I'll leave to you as to why. Do you not see that these are exactly the same? That is to say, the body of the man, the body of the woman, to all, in all nations, and we're going to get to this with our study of Passage to India, times all over the earth. This is in many ways why Whitman transcends his American identity and becomes the world's poet. We're going to say more about that when we study a passage, a poem like Passage to India. And then he says it this way, if anything is sacred, and by the way, in the 55 version he wrote it as if life and the soul are sacred, but here he edits to, if anything is sacred, the human body is sacred. So again, we come back to defy this Miltonic idea, Augustinian idea, that the body is disgusting and only the soul is sacred. And the glory and sweet of a man is the token, it's an interesting word, of manhood untainted. Now the reason untainted is significant is we're going to get this whole thing about corruption here in a little bit. In other words, the more natural the human body is for Whitman, the more pure, pristine it is, right? And in man or woman, and notice now the list, a clean, strong, firm-fibered body is more beautiful than the most beautiful face. In other words, the body is far more, for Whitman, important than just simply a beautiful face. Now already, when Whitman's writing and publishing in 55, there for women especially will be this use of the makeup to try to enhance the physical physiognomy. And as well for men, their ability to dress up and look fine in those parlors and lecture rooms that are referenced in passage number 7. Notice Whitman is de-emphasizing all of the facade to try to speak to exactly the real. And then he finishes the poem with, again, rhetorical questions. Have you seen the fool? Notice earlier in passage 7, right, it was the sloven, here it's the fool, that corrupted his own live body. Now, it's interesting that he uses the word live. In other words, there's a juxtaposition between the physical versus the metaphysical. Whitman is having none of that. In other words, he's not going to allow anyone to de-emphasize the physical body to elevate the spiritual body. He's not going to play that game at all. He'll come back. Or the fool that corrupted her own live body. By the way, notice with this use of corruption here, it's all preceded by this, have you seen? Have you seen? Back to, of course, do you not see? In other words, understand, we're back to epistemology again, right? For, to finish, they do not conceal themselves, you can't hide, and cannot conceal themselves. Now, of course, we go back to our Genesis 3 story, and you'll remember that after Adam and Eve have eaten from the forbidden fruit, what is it that they do? Well, you're right. They're going to try and hide from God. Why? Because they are ashamed. Whitman is going to undo all of that and say there is no hiding. It's almost as if Whitman wants to become the new eye in the sky, the new kind of God persona, and say there's no hiding. You can't get away from this. And then that's the end of passage 8 in the deathbed edition, but that's not the end of the poem in the 55 edition. There were 2 additional lines that ran, "Who degrades or defiles the living human body is cursed. Who degrades or defiles the body of the dead is not more cursed." Now, he decided to edit these lines out as probably being a little too extreme and maybe a little too challenging, but the point I think Whitman is trying to make is obviously here well made. You cannot be ashamed, and now we'll finish it at our 2A messaging here. You can't be ashamed of who you are, your body or your soul. And obviously we would extend that to be anything else that you could potentially be ashamed of, your socioeconomic status, your skin color, or anything else that might identify you as who you are. You can't be ashamed of any of that. Here we're going to see that Whitman's inclusivity, his desire to try and bring all of us together, right, in the procession, as he will call it in passage 6 and 7, right? At 2B, I'm going to ask you to consider, why all these editings of these missing lines? What do you think about that? And you get to decide that. At 3A, well, we could obviously just mentioned Sojourner Truth. All of the important feminist voices from Virginia Woolf to Audre Lorde and everybody in between all have to be mentioned here. We've mentioned Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison in other lectures as well. Finally, at 3B, in a way to own a passage like this, what was a time that you did struggle with some shame? And for what reasons did you feel ashamed? And how did you move beyond that shame? Well, Whitman's going to, speaking of shame now, pick up with the section 9 that was not a part of the 55 edition of this poem. Many readers in the deathbed edition did not like I Sing the Body Electric passage 9. Many scholars have seen it as a waste of time. We go back to the cataloging and the celebration of the physical body. And boy, oh boy, is Whitman going to pretty much mention everything there. So come back for some more controversy. Thank you.